want to let it grow as long as possible. It's tax deferral, right? So I don't want to pay taxes on it. I want to let it grow as long as possible. I want to give it to my kids, grandkids, set up a nice inheritance. I don't need it. I don't want it.
Mm-hmm.
In the eyes of the IRS, you have one IRA. So it doesn't matter if you have one at Hartford, one at Vanguard, one somewhere else. You can take it out of all three. You can take it out of one, but you have to allocate them. What's the total dollar amount? So that's the whole pitch. Doesn't that get kind of confusing? Why not bring everything in with Hartford funds? Have three accounts in one place. Multiple accounts are fine, multiple places, that's where it gets very confusing. Because if you forget about one and you don't take it out, as we mentioned, 50% penalty, and you still have to take that money out. So the requirement of distributions, they have to take the minimum, but they could always take more.
Yeah. Okay. But they still have to consider.
Yeah. So that second question, the other question you just had, that's why it's so important, because if I have $25,000 in three different places, in the eyes of the IRS, that's $75,000. So say my RMD, I'm just making up a number, is $10,000 total for those three accounts. I can take that 10 out of account A, account B, or account C, or I can take 33 and a third from account A, account B, and account C. But again, it gets very confusing, right? So why not consolidate? Why not bring it in, especially when you're 72, 73 and RMD start? It gets very confusing thinking about it in so many different places. So bring the accounts in, multiple accounts in one place are fine, but multiple places, again, it gets very confusing. And if I forget one of those account values and I forget to add that in, I forget to take the money out, then again, there's a 50% penalty, plus I still have to take that dollar amount out. So if I forget about the third account and I only think I have 50,000 IRAs and I take out RMDs based on 50, not 75, again, it's a big penalty. Yeah, I mean, I think there's probably two. One is forgetting those accounts, forgetting that I've got to take my requirement of distribution. And then secondly is forgetting about requirement of distributions. Although firms, were required to send out forms and notifications. Here's your RMD amount. But, you may have good intentions, right? And you've got three different accounts, three different places, and they each say, for example, I've got to take out $1,000. Well, if you got three accounts, it's $3,000, right? But you may forget, and you may take 1,000 out of one, 1,000 out of another, and forget about that third account. So that's probably what people do, is they forget, the time frame, or they just forget in general that the dollar amount has to be satisfied. What's that total again? I forgot. Well, we've had people contact us years ago and say, well, it was pretty close. Close is not good enough, unfortunately, and that penalty again is pretty steep.
Can you go through that example of the penalty again? Like if you were supposed to take $10,000 and you only took $5,000, like what gets penalized? Like the $5,000 you didn't pay, and is it?
Yeah, so
where's
and
the
I think
50% come in?
And I think it's important to note, because years ago, quite honestly, you really were on the honor system, because there was no reporting to you as a client or to the firm or to the government. So the government didn't know if you had $1 in your account or $10 million in your account. So they didn't know what your requirement of distribution really was that you had to send or take out. So people really were on the honor system, and you can imagine how well that went, right? Most people didn't turn themselves in for making an error, where now everything's tracked. So again, that idea, say my requirement of distribution is $10,000, but I only took out $5,000 and I either forgot about the rest, or I was going to take it out for the end of the year and I didn't. So now the penalty is assessed on that $5,000, a 50% penalty. So there's going to be a $2,500 penalty because I didn't take it out. Plus I still have to take out the $5,000, and now I have to pay taxes on that additional $5,000. So it really becomes, if it's not that you ever want to, mitigate any of these penalties, but a small penalty, it's not good, but it's not the end of the world. If it's large money, the penalties can be quite substantial. So if nothing else, make sure you're talking to a tax professional, talking to your financial professional. Is my requirement of distribution this year satisfied? So I don't have to worry about that penalty. Yeah,
Or
so you
it's
should get a
really,
notification. I think every company's probably different. I think so. We probably send it out. That's probably a question internally.
yeah, okay.
But yeah, they get a notification of what their dollar amount is that's required to be. They get the 5498. I'm sorry. So they do get
Yeah,
the form. So we send out a 5498. It tells them their requirement of distribution obligation. I don't know if they email that or mail it out. You can check
yeah,
internally. So I think there's three that we kind of promote, and we call it keep it, use it, and donate it. So the requirement of distribution again has to be taken, right? So I take that money out. Now I have that money. I can keep it. You know, I can put it in my bank account. I can invest it. I can, use it to pay bills for holidays or, Thanksgiving table dinner. We're still paying that off or something. So I can keep that money. It probably will disappear very quickly, but I can keep it and certainly use it to pay some bills. I think a lot of folks look at kind of that second option, which is use it. Maybe this is a new source of money that, especially if you waited till the end of the year, that tells me you probably didn't need that requirement of distribution. You're probably upset about taking it anyways. So why not use it for something good? Meaning, why not use it to fund a 529 for your kids or grandkids for next year? If you're healthy, use it to fund a life insurance policy that you can set up again, maybe for your spouse or kids or grandkids. Set up some type of lifetime foundation if you wanted to or whatever. But you have that flexibility. It's after tax money, so I've got to take it. Now, what do I do with that money, right? So you can certainly use it. I can use it and I can invest it, and maybe set up an after-tax type of account. So a lot of folks look at that. And then this third option, I think, especially for folks that are charitably inclined, is I can donate it. So if I don't want my requirement of distribution, I don't need my requirement of distribution. More importantly, I'm charitably inclined. I have a charity that I have an association with or an affiliation or an affection with, right? So I want to help donate and contribute to a good nonprofit. One, it has to be a public nonprofit. So, an organization that's well known or, 501c3. So well known. It can't be the Mike Lynch Foundation. It'd be great if it was, but it's not going to be the Mike Lynch Foundation. I can transfer that money or direct or redirect that money directly from my IRA to that nonprofit organization up to $100,000. So say my requirement of distribution is, $50,000. Don't want it, don't need it, have a charitable organization that I want to benefit. I can contact the Hartford Funds and say, don't send it to me. And that's one of the key things about this. Do not send it to me. Send it to the nonprofit organization. Send it to the Red Cross. Send it to XYZ, whatever that charitable organization is, and have it be sent directly to them in their name. Again, the key is I can't touch it. I can't be involved in it. I can't get the check, cash it, then write a check to an organization because that kind of defeats the purpose. By doing that, I satisfy my requirement of distribution. So now in the eyes of the IRS, I've taken my requirement of distribution. However, I do not get a charitable donation or a deduction for doing this. So it's kind of a wash. I don't pay taxes on the money that I didn't receive, obviously, but I also don't get a tax deduction. So it's kind of a net wash, if you will, or it nets out at the end of the day. The other idea is I have some money, I make a donation to a charitable organization. Well, I might be able to write that off. I might be able to, it's almost a cleaner way, if you will, for folks that do want to do this and have that intention. But again, the key is, and we tell it all the time, but people still, for some reason, take the money and then donate it to the organization. That's not the same thing. So it's a direct transfer from Hartford Funds, in our case, to that nonprofit organization. I don't pay taxes on it. I satisfy my requirement of distribution, but I don't get a tax deduction either, which is kind of that downside.
your client.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, one way is market performance, right? So It's based on the market performance or the account value of the end of the year. So if unfortunately the market goes down, that may be indirectly you're going to reduce your requirement of distribution. Let's hope that's not the case, right? So a lot of folks are starting to say, I don't want the RMD. I don't need the RMD. What if I converted some of my IRA to a Roth IRA? Now, I will say the Roth isn't right for everybody. You certainly want to sit down and talk to your tax professional, your financial professional, have this conversation. But some folks are starting to maybe think about chipping away, if you will, a little bit at that IRA. So I just took my RMD. I'm a little upset about it because it's a big number. Didn't want it, didn't need it. Maybe I donated it, maybe I didn't. I can look at my IRA now and say, maybe I should convert some of it from an IRA to a Roth. Now, by converting this, it's a taxable event. But the good news is if I hold it for another 5 years, I'm over 59 and a half, I can take that money out tax-free, or I can let that money continue to grow, no required minimum distribution. So unlike an IRA where next year I've got to take my requirement of distribution again, if I convert a portion of my IRA to a Roth IRA, the money in the Roth is now excluded from that RMD calculation. So it may reduce my requirement of distribution for next year. Again, it's not right for everybody. Some folks are saying, maybe I'll convert a little bit at a time as opposed to converting everything. And I think it's a great strategy. I think to at least sit down and have a conversation with your tax professional. And the key I think you want to really stress or relay is how much can we afford to convert? We don't want to make you destitute. We don't want to change your life at 72 or whatever, especially for folks that are approaching RMD age that are concerned about this. Maybe now's the time to really start to think about, should I start converting some IRA to a Roth IRA? But again, the key is how much can you afford to convert? If you've got $100,000 in your IRA, maybe it doesn't make sense to convert all of it, but would it make sense to maybe convert $10,000? Now it lowers your IRA for next year, lowers your RMD for next year, and now you've got some money in a Roth. Again, the key is it is a taxable event, so it's not right for everybody, but some folks are starting to think about that. I think from a financial professional perspective, it's, is this your only IRA? And having that conversation. If you're a client, I think the opportunity to say, let me take an inventory. It's a great time to maybe take a step back. The holidays are approaching. Take 5 minutes for yourself, right? Just take a look and say, wait a second, where are all these IRAs? Do I know where they are? A lot of folks don't know because a friend of a friend opened one up years ago and they lost track of it. Or they, separated from service. They rolled it over to an IRA with a new advisor who switched to a different firm and they lost track of that or whatever. So people do have, it's been stated, between 3 and 4 different IRAs. Why? Again, multiple accounts make a lot of sense. Well, they may say, well, I've got a blended family. I've got a special needs child. I've got a charitable organization that I want to have as a beneficiary in addition to my grandkids or whatever. That's great. Multiple accounts, are fine. Multiple places is where it gets very confusing. I was thinking the other day, it was very simplistic, but I had my favorite electrician, who's my only electrician, hang a new TV in my living room. And I'm thinking, I don't have 3 or 4 electricians. I don't have 3 or 4 dentists. I don't have 3 or 4 general physicians or general practitioners. I have one of each, but I've got 4 or 5 different IRAs and I'm 72 years of age and I'm scratching my head trying to, remember certain things. Make your life a little bit easier. Consolidation, I think, is the key. You've got a good financial professional, let them manage everything. Again, multiple accounts, don't have them bring everything into one account because it may defeat the whole purpose. So multiple accounts, it really do have, I think, a great impact, but multiple places, it just gets too confusing, I think, especially when the 50% penalty is kind of out there lurking sometimes.
So would a client then just maybe gather their statements and take them to their financial advisor and sort through all of that and find out what was logical in terms of, well, you mentioned consolidation in a particular place versus consolidating accounts. So maybe reining in some of those accounts with your financial advisor.
Yeah, I mean, if it were me, I would do an inventory, see what I have. I would double check with my wife, do an inventory of her accounts, sit down with our financial professional, bring in all our statements, think about, what was the intention? Was there really a clear intention to have multiple accounts? Or was it just, again, a friend of a friend years ago? So maybe it does make sense to have one or two different accounts. Now's the time to look at that and make things a little bit cleaner. And then more importantly, again, with the holidays coming up, you may want to, as you're sitting around the table, just mention it to some family members and say, hey, here's something we did. Does it make sense for you to kind of think about that? Again, kind of checking one thing off your list, right? We've all got complicated lives and time is such a precious commodity. Why not make things a little bit easier, especially as we're getting older, things are getting more complicated. Just try and clean up, it's that you control the things you can't control. That's one of the things you really do have the ability of controlling, and think about consolidating again, just to make your life a little bit easier.